In this section, I'm going to talk to you about the Ketubah. Ketubah is a Hebrew word that means a written document, literally something that has been lichtov, has been written down. And when people think about a Jewish wedding, I think the Ketubah is one of the most classical images or ritual objects that comes to mind. And the idea of a Ketubah is very, very old. It's an ancient document. Long before there was 23andMe or Ancestry.com, people recorded the names of the people and places that they committed to partnership. And they used Ketubot both as currency and also as documents of genealogy. And to this day, many people, when they ask me, I'm not sure what my Hebrew name is, or my mother's Hebrew name, or my grandmother's Hebrew name, and I say, go check out your parents' Ketubah, because that's where these names are recorded. The places that people committed to love and partnership actually serves this larger thing of being an archival document. And you can go to archives across the Jewish world and find hundreds, if not thousands of years of Ketubot to learn about the origins and ancestry of your family. In its time, the Ketubah was a radical document. It asserted that a bride would be transferred from her father's house to her husband's house, and in so doing, he would be obligated to feed, clothe, and sex her. In our time, that sounds rather antiquated and utterly sexist. The idea that a man can acquire a woman doesn't resonate in our queer feminist lives. But in its moment, it was actually quite radical. Because it meant that actually a man couldn't just have sex with her and then say, you're no longer a virgin and of no use to me. He was actually had obligations to care for her, which in a society in which a woman was not permitted to earn her own, be financially independent, this was actually quite important. And the radical sentiment actually came from the word kadosh, from the idea that what was happening in the Ketubah was holy and sacred and marked a distinction. And we've, over the course of centuries, if not millennia, have continued to update and innovate on the practice of the Ketubah and to make it relevant and meaningful and radical in our time, and to use it as a way to express sentiments of what it is we're really committing to articulate what am I obligated to and what am I obligating myself to, and what do we long for in our partnership, what are our aspirations, what's true, what do we hope for, and how can we be as clear and transparent about those intentions. And so the Ketubah is a place for tremendous creativity and expression as a couple. And, the earliest ideas of Ketubot, they actually come from the Babylonian Talmud. Masechet Ketubot begins to document discussions about who signs it and what it says. The document itself is both an artifact and also an artistic expression. The practice of Hidur Mitzvah, of making it beautiful, is perhaps seen most keenly in the practice of Ketubot, which tend to express something of the couple, but also something of the place and the time that they were made. We have a whole folder of resources to help you design your Ketubah and figure out the right words. We have sample language, we have links to artists, and in this particular moment, we really recommend the convenience of a website, ketubah.com. It sounds overly simple, but actually it's a consortium of artists and ideas that have all come together so you can both customize the language and customize the aesthetic and have it shipped right to your house. It even comes with an archival pen. So we really encourage you to spend some time on ketubah.com getting ideas, both for what you want it to look like and what you want the words to be within it. The content of the Ketubah, there's a lot of room to play, and there's also a lot of tradition that you can be inspired by. The opening paragraph tends to be very classic and say the date, both in Hebrew and the English counting, the places and the names of the people, including the names of their families and where they're coming from. The content of the rest of the Ketubah, there's a lot of room for innovation and creativity. What are you aspiring to? People will also often put commitments around having a Jewish home, how they plan to raise children, accompanying each other in a time of death, illness, or sickness. It can include what should happen if you no longer want to be part of this partnership. How would this partnership be dissolved? So there can be a lot of intention into how the language that goes in there, and it can be long, it can be short. Some people choose to have the Ketubah only in English, some only in Hebrew, some have English and Hebrew for the whole thing. Increasingly, we're seeing a lot of people who are doing the opening formula in both Hebrew and English, but then the rest of the text that's sort of more postmodern, linguistically specific, just in English, which I think is a nice compromise and also accounts for sort of how long these documents can get. One of the questions that we're most frequently asked is who can sign a ketubah? And the answer is your witnesses. And witnesses are in the Hebrew category of adim. And classically, adim were cisgender men who were shomer Shabbat and shomer kashrut, which is to say they were religious, observant Jewish men. Obviously, in our time, that doesn't work as a category for us. What we think that means is they were people of integrity, people for whom this was a meaningful obligation to witness. And witnesses happen in groups of two. So what you need to make your wedding happen, to actually effectuate this Jewish wedding, is two witnesses. Now, the question of whether those witnesses need to be Jewish is quite common. And there's two ways that we think about this at Kol Tzedek. One approach to your witnesses is to think about them as two people who are most likely to support you and sustain you as a partnership. Who will you go to when you have a question, when things are hard? Who already supports you and has brought you to this day? And those people may or may not be Jewish. Certainly we have no requirements around them being cisgender men. We have no requirements around their religious observance of any kind. So you may think of the people who are most likely to support you, and that may or may not include them being Jewish. Another way to look at this is that a ketubah is a Jewish legal contract. It's a wedding document in Jewish tradition. And so you might say, it makes sense to me that only Jews can effectuate a Jewish document, in which case it might be important to you as a couple to have your two witnesses be Jewish. Whether or not you decide it's important that they're observant Jews is completely up to you. We're comfortable with witnesses being either Jewish or not Jewish, and what matters to us is that you've been thoughtful about selecting the right people, because actually, while it's common these days for you as a couple to sign the ketubah, and for me as your misader brit ahuvim, as your officiant or facilitator to sign it, we actually don't make you married. It's actually your witnesses that make this real and possible. And so to be thoughtful about picking those witnesses is one of the sacred obligations that you have as people who are getting married. The only category of people that can't serve as your witnesses are a category that are nogea badavar, which literally means the matter touches it. We would call that they're not impartial. And that is your family. It can be family by blood or by marriage. This often comes as a surprise to people. Many people are thinking, I might have my sister or my brother-in-law or my mother would serve as my witness. And actually, that's a place where we do hold by the tradition. And we actually say that you can't have any family serve as your witnesses. You need to find chosen family, supportive friends who are not nogea badavar, who are able to effectuate this contract. So there's the ketubah itself, there's the witnesses, and then the third element is actually the signing of the ketubah. And there's a lot of different customs around the signing of the ketubah. In Ashkenazi tradition, classically, the ketubah is signed immediately prior to the chuppah. This could be before the tish or after the tish, but it sort of marks a moment of separation. It can be with everyone present, like your tish could conclude and everyone could be there for the signing of the ketubah, which would then lead into the chuppah itself. Or it can actually be a smaller group, your immediate family or an extended circle of 10 or 20 people who would be present just for the ketubah signing. In the Sephardic tradition, the ketubah signing actually classically happens under the chuppah itself. It extends the ceremony. And so you don't actually have to sign the ketubah beforehand. You can decide to sign it under the chuppah. Some of what might dictate that for you is what other creative and innovative elements are you doing under the chuppah. I like to say that a chuppah should be between 20 and 40 minutes. It should be short enough that people won't have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of this ritual. They can sort of have one attention span towards it. And so if you have a lot of other creative elements, you might want to separate out the ketubah signing and do it beforehand. If you have a rather traditional and concise chuppah ceremony, you might actually want it to be one flowing event, and that would work as well. There's one other circumstance, which is that you might decide you want to sign the ketubah on a Friday afternoon. And this would happen if you're getting married perhaps on a Saturday evening or a Sunday morning with a lot of proximity to Shabbat. And there's a custom in that case for actually signing the ketubah on Friday preceding Shabbat when you're already oskei kiddushin, when you're already dealing with the matters of the wedding. It's already the wedding weekend, but you want to make sure that you are able to sign the ketubah without any rush or interference of Shabbat practice, and so you can actually do that on Friday afternoon. You can also certainly do it on Friday afternoon if you're getting married on Friday afternoon, which is also an option. The other thing to say about the ketubah signing is that it tends to be brief. It tends to be, 10, 15 minutes. There's a little bit of singing, but it's a relatively straightforward and short ritual moment. It can happen in a separate room, but it doesn't have to. And for those who choose to sign the ketubah in advance of the chuppah, you can then decide to have a piece of the ketubah read under the chuppah to bring in those ritual intentions and the partnership intentions into the chuppah ceremony itself.